Well, we have looked at the Jirga, from here, and what we have witnessed is that it was a very privileged moment of Afghan togetherness. Thousands of people have gone to meet together. So, as far as the EU is concerned, we always value the fact that there's dialogue between the different parties. So the fact that Afghans came from all across the country sometimes took a bit of, pain and risk to go to Kabul, I think should be applauded. And the fact that they have sat around the table together with 50 committees and discussed and sometimes disagreed on many things is very healthy. So it is a good moment for Afghans to discuss about all their issues. And it is also a traditional, ancestral way for Afghans to do things. So all this is very good, and I very much value the fact that Afghans are discussing between themselves. So this is something outside foreigners, there is no foreign participation. It's really in the hands of the Afghans, and it is an effort, to bring the peace process forward. Now, this Jirga is probably not the end of the road. It is one step in the long road to peace, but we hope that it can be a useful step and that it can help, more inclusiveness in the next step of the peace process. I think for the last 6 to 12 months, the situation has dramatically changed. 12 months ago, Afghanistan was in a situation where basically, if you want to summarize, you were only fighting. Now, the fighting unfortunately continues, and there's too much casualties, civilian casualties. There was, as we speak, a few hours ago, another big attack in Kabul, for which I take this opportunity, to present my sympathy and my condolences. So there's still too much fighting, but there's also talking. And this to us is the real game changer now. Thanks notably to the American effort, to engage into formal, direct talks with the Taliban, we see this as a necessary step to break a certain deadlock. So we believe that this was a good thing to do, to sit across the table and disagree and talk and discuss, but at least to discuss, to open a possibility for dialogue. I hear your point that there are many different groups, and I think at a certain stage, we will need to open, also a channel of communication with the groups with whom there is not. Because everybody needs, to express its opinion and to feel involved. Now, what we would like to see is that the talking, as the process goes on, is also accompanied by a reduction of violence. Because it's very difficult to continue talking while there is so many casualties. Many people tell me it was difficult at the beginning not to have any fighting, but I think now, the fight and talk period has been very long. It's already a few months. Now maybe is the right time to talk without fighting and to have a serious reduction of violence, to have a ceasefire on both sides, and to allow a more serene and peaceful discussion to take place. If the parties are serious about the peace process, they should sit down together, without the fighting. This, I hope, will come as soon as possible. And the EU would certainly, favor that and would certainly try to help all the parties in implementing this the best way we can. So it is very important now to move to another stage. There has been fight and talk. Now let's talk without fight. And there's another thing that should also evolve is the inclusivity of the process. We believe that, as I said, we welcome and we support all the efforts that have been made so far to open the dialogue. But now, as we gradually move on, I think all the parties should be around the table. The government should be associated to the discussions, the different ethnic groups, the different parties, because that is how you will achieve a meaningful, discussion on the most important points for the future of Afghanistan. Yes, as I said, we believe that now would be the time to move to another stage. And this stage is to have a conversation without fighting. That means a ceasefire that would be there not only for 3 days, and that was a very good thing that happened, last year. I think it showed that if there is political will, the two parties can do it. They can stop the fight. And I think this was, something very important that happened, because it showed that it is possible, number one, and it showed, the great happiness and relief of the population of Afghanistan. I think it came out so clearly that Afghans wanted a ceasefire, that Afghans wanted peace. So I think the leaders on both sides should listen to this appetite from the population to move to a situation where there is peace, or at least a ceasefire. So the EU certainly, pleads in favor of a ceasefire as soon as possible. That would allow maybe an even better discussion to take place, a deeper discussion, without having to bother with, military command and fighting on the ground. No, I think a ceasefire, to be a real ceasefire, needs to be implemented by both parties. I think it's a very noble initiative to propose a ceasefire, even to propose a unilateral ceasefire. I think this is a nice gesture. But of course, to have a real ceasefire, honestly, I don't imagine a situation where one party would stop fighting and the other one would continue attacking. It doesn't make a lot of sense. That may last for one day if the other party needs one day to see that it is true that the other party is not attacking, but not more than that. So I think the ceasefire should be taken on both sides to allow for a real, change in the security situation of the country that may, start building trust between the different parties, the different groups, and that would create, we believe, an environment that would be much more conducive to achieving a peace agreement. So if the parties are really serious about peace, and they are discussing in Doha and elsewhere, if they are really serious, well, the logical thing would be to go for a ceasefire and go deeper into the discussion. I think the position of the European Union has been pretty clear and unambiguous in this. We believe that not only in Afghanistan, but in all countries in the world, women are 50% of the population, even more. So it seems a bit illogical to us that women do not participate, to the peace process, to the discussion. For us, women should be, as much as possible, included in all stages of the discussion.
But not only like a symbol.
No, that they should meaningfully have a voice to be heard, and they should, report on what their ideal, what their ambitions are, and they should be listened to. It's the famous principle of you never talk about something without the person you talk about, never about them without them. Yes. And we very much believe in this. So now, who are we to say that? Some people may ask. Well, I think this is first of all a rather universal principle that is being applied in most countries across the world. But it seems to be the appetite of the Afghan population. What I hear from the Afghans when we listen to them, when we talk to them, is that there is a real willingness to have a very inclusive process where all the different groups of Afghanistan are represented. So now I know, and we are not naive, that there are some very traditional also, parts of Afghanistan, and they want to be heard, and we respect that. But I think we need to find, a way to make these two positions coexist. And certainly the respect of human beings and of dignity is very important. Look, I couldn't find a better way to express our position on this than what the EU High Representative, Mrs. Mogherini, has actually, the formula she has used. And she said the peace process is very important, so we should work on the peace process as if there was no elections. But we should also work on the elections and prepare the elections as if there was no peace process. So for us, the elections and the peace process are two tracks that are as important as one another. And they should be worked on and promoted, the two of them at the same time. There's too much uncertainty for the time being still on the peace process to say, well, we focus only on the peace process and we leave the elections on the side. It would be a mistake to do that now. So we are working with Afghanistan to help on the peace process. The EU is very much involved and is willing to be even, more helpful on the peace process, and we are ready to work with any country in the world to try to have a very cooperative and inclusive format of discussion with our partners. But we also work on the elections, so we prepare the elections. We are helping through different channels Afghanistan to prepare for the next elections, the presidential ones, and notably to try, as you were saying, to try to overcome the shortcomings of the previous elections. Mm-hmm. What we are trying to do is to look at what hasn't worked too well. Don't be too concerned because, there are problems in elections in all countries of the world. So I think you are doing your best and a lot of things have improved. But there's still a lot of improvement that can be done. So we are helping Afghanistan to identify these shortcomings and to work on them so that the presidential elections can actually be improved compared to the legislative elections. We support elections financially, and we also support the elections through, experts, notably experts that would go on the ground and monitor the election. These are small teams because of the security situation. We can't deploy the very, very large teams that we sometimes deploy in other countries, even though we would like to, but it's not possible. But we are also helping through experts, to monitor the elections.
Thank you very much. And for the last question, what's your message for the Afghan people, especially for the young generation?
Keep the hope, because the situation is still very, very painful in Afghanistan, and we suffer ourselves a lot when we see, all the pain and the sadness and the casualties that happen in Afghanistan every day. And as we speak now, there was, as I referred to, there was again an attack, and every day people are dying. So the youth must be very depressed, and I would understand that. But as I said also before, I think things are changing slowly. Now there is a window of opportunity. There is a dialogue that has started. There is a process that has started. It's not perfect. It's difficult. I mean, we need to be realistic. It's probably going to take some time, but at least we have reached another type of moment now in Afghanistan, where the pain is still there, but at least the hope is getting a little bit better, because people are talking, and at least as far as we are concerned, Europeans, with the member states of the EU, we are very committed, to help the peace process in Afghanistan. We don't have any ambition to lead that, but to work with our international partners in a very cooperative and inclusive way, and to help all the efforts that are being made, but also to help the Afghans themselves, to have the ownership of their own process. And I think that if there's goodwill and readiness to work on the peace process of Afghanistan for Afghanistan, not to defend national interest, but to defend the progress in Afghanistan and in the region, then I think the youth should see some light at the end of the tunnel out there.